This is reminding me of U-boats in World War II. This is by Real Engineering, and it's showing how China is going to stop submarines and inevitably cut off Taiwan, taking Taiwan. Dude, with all the chaos in the world that's happening, like, I wouldn't be surprised. You've got Israel, Palestine, you got India and Pakistan, you got Ukraine and Russia. Like, this is literally all we need.
The world's oceans are a vast and mysterious expanse, and beneath their surface lurks an invisible armada. Right now, at this very moment, an unknown number of submarines, stealthy, silent, and armed with the most advanced weaponry ever devised, are gliding through the depths.
Literally nukes. There's literally nuclear submarines. This also reminds me of like how Australia was trying to buy a bunch of submarines from the US, obviously to counteract China. This is going to be obviously a problem for them, unless... I think that this wall, so we're going to be talking about a wall to guard against submarines coming close to Taiwan. As long as those submarines are just staying off the coast of Australia, they should be okay. Maybe we'll talk about that though.
Ballistic missile-armed submarines capable of wiping entire cities off the map to attack submarines stalking their targets from the darkness of the ocean floor, ready to cripple their enemy's surface operations. These vessels operate in a realm beyond civilian sight and often beyond accountability. Just last year, a Russian Kilo-class submarine was detected inside the Philippines' exclusive economic zone and had to be escorted out by the Philippines Navy.
Dang, and that's Russia. I mean, who knows what China is doing to like the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. The Chinese in the Philippines, they're doing some crazy, they got like laser pointer wars that are basically happening.
Every major naval power maintains a fleet of these submarines. And every major naval power has invested billions of dollars into detecting and destroying these dangerous machines.
Yes, but it's important to note which powers have a lot more than the others. Only 6 countries currently operate nuclear submarines, and it's by far and away the USA with 66, then it is Russia with 31. China's at 12, then the UK, France, and India. We'll see about Australia. But submarines in general, there's a lot more to go around. Obviously, they don't all necessarily have to be nuclear, but Brazil and South Africa have submarines, but none of them are nuclear powered.
At an estimated cost of $300 million. And China has not been shy about sharing their new capability, with videos of the installation process and scaled models of the system being shown off on national Chinese news.
Oh yeah, I'm sure this is like a point of like pride for sure. I mean, China really likes to do that. A lot of other countries like to do that. I feel like the US doesn't quite do that as much, at least not when it comes to military, the industrial military industry. We all know how crazy it probably is, but other countries love to gloat like, yeah, we got like 100 new tanks we're just building.
We saw fiber optic cables being attached to by an ROV.
This is very impressive though.
Array. These are active devices that send pulses of sound and wait for a return signal, with 3 of them being attached to a primary gateway,
these graphics,
allowing them to precisely triangulate the position of anything within range. The system also incorporates hydrophones, passive detection that simply listens for intruders. While nations around the world have spent billions developing ultra-quiet submarine technologies, this system prevents an enemy from being able to locate the sensors through those sonar pings, which are audible to their target. Each cluster of acoustic sensors are estimated to have around a 160-kilometer range.
Wow.
And China is expanding that system to cover every entry path into the South China Sea.
That is crazy. Not only is it to, obviously watch for Taiwan, but also for just the South China Sea in general. Both these regions extremely worry me. I feel like if China were to get into any sort of war or conflict or military operation, it's more than likely going to be because of these two. Because of these two specific areas.
Linked to onshore facilities, delivering 10 kilovolts of high-power direct current, while each of the sensors are connected by optical fibers, allowing data to be quickly shared and analyzed. Incredibly, there also appears to be a charging dock incorporated for an underwater drone, which may be for system maintenance, but could easily be used to power autonomous drones designed to attack submarines. One of the many areas of technological development under focus by naval powers around the world, but more on that later. This is a massive undertaking. This scale model depicts the system as it was installed and tested off the southern coast of Hainan, which is also one of China's primary submarine pens and a vital part of their force projection into the South China Sea.
Imagine we had this during the whole U-boat thing in World War II. Like, well, they probably wouldn't be able to terrorize. It's funny how like submarines still terrorize around today. Well, I guess they never stopped. They even after the U-boats, like other people were using other submarines to terrorize. I guess that's always why, especially during the Cold War, like both powers were always looking to find ways to detect the other side submarines.
Detecting a submarine is simply the first part.
Once we started making nuclear submarines, like everything changed. You gotta like remember all the different delivery systems that we've had for nukes. Like every new technology that was able to deliver nukes, whether it was just like a bomber plane able to fly longer or to fly higher than ever before, like it completely changed the game every single time. I don't think I need to say just how crazy it was once nuclear submarines became a thing. Then you would never be able to find it. Well, at least that was the idea, that you wouldn't be able to detect these nuclear submarines, but I guess China has a way.
And there are many more ways of unmasking these machines as they lurk below the surface. Sound isn't the only way. This is the Lockheed P-3 Orion, one of the primary tools in the United States submarine hunting arsenal, and one of the few planes in the United States military that has been in service for over 50 years.
Jeez.
It can carry a huge range of anti-submarine weapons like the Mark 50 torpedo. It was specifically designed to attack deep-diving submarines, and its primary design feature to allow it to complete this task is its propulsion system. We need a high energy density power source to achieve the speeds and range needed.
I literally only know about this technology because of World of Warships, basically. It's kind of hilarious. Is that not how everyone gets pulled into like being like nerds about military equipment? It's just military games. War Thunder is the biggest one for tanks, but there's plenty of other ones, World of Tanks, things like that. I'm pretty sure that is the gateway, or you were just somebody in the military that really liked this stuff.
Weapon like this. But there's one
normies
major
like me, it was
problem
video games.
for a device designed to dive to the extreme depths that submarines dwell in. The pressure outside the torpedo continually rises, and eventually that pressure is going to be higher than the exhaust pressure of the engine. This can be solved by actively pumping the exhaust out, but there is a more elegant solution: storing the exhaust products on board. For most combustion engines, this is a recipe for disaster. But with the right reactants, it can work. I'm
just thinking about how for how many decades we've been doing so much. We've been advancing technology. Like, this is incredible. Like, this sort of engineering is mind-blowing, but it's kind of scary that we put so much effort into war things like this, the military-industrial complex, like we said. Now, luckily, we kind of, when it comes to nuclear stuff, we don't need to use a lot of these really advanced systems, the really, really advanced systems, because there hasn't been two great powers that have gone to war. I mean, there are some pretty advanced systems that are being used in Ukraine and Israel and stuff like that. But luckily, it's funny how often I'm talking about like, I'm thinking of the bomber race that happened in the 50s between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, or the fighter race, like all that, all the aviation that was going on. Like, these two powers were just racing to see who could get the best planes, essentially, even though they never really used it against each other. But, one side would pull ahead, the other side would freak out. They'd have to pull ahead. When it comes to the Soviet Union, the reports are that they never really did pull ahead. They just reported that they do have a better technology. The U.S. freaked out. They would actually get better than that. The U.S. never had the USSR never had the technology in the first place.
This torpedo is powered by a lithium fuel and a sulfur hexafluoride oxidizer, a highly unusual fuel oxidizer combination. But they have one critical property. The volume of the products of combustion is smaller than the volume of the reactants, allowing them to be stored on board without any pressure buildup. The reaction occurs inside a boiler where the heat generated is used to create steam, which drives the propeller. The steam is then driven to a condenser mounted on the outside surface of the torpedo, where it can be cooled by the surrounding water rushing by, and then returned to the boiler as liquid water. This system also means the torpedo does not have an exhaust wake, making it harder to detect.
Again, I'm glad. Well, I don't even know if I want to say I'm glad. I'm not glad. It's like weird that we focus so much energy on this stuff. That is unfortunate. Imagine we focus this energy on improving the world and stuff. I know that there are people that do that, but there is also a lot of people that focus on this stuff. I mean, that's not We'll probably get into it in the different part of the video. I'm not going to get into it right now.
However, the B3 is rarely used in an offensive manner. Its primary role is in reconnaissance.
Because I do think defense is important. You do need to have defense.
And one of its most distinguishable features
this stuff is
this
so incredible.
huge pole sticking out of its rear stabilizer. This is a magnetic anomaly detector. It searches for the tiniest disturbances in the Earth's magnetic field.
Jeez.
The hull of a typical submarine is made out of ferrous materials that become magnetized by the Earth's magnetic field. This induced magnetic field then disrupts the relatively constant distribution of the naturally occurring magnetic field.
Wow.
There are a couple of methods to measure magnetic field anomalies like this. We have quantified the strange induced magnetic fields of Europa using a fairly simple magnetometer. It consists of a base coil wrapped around a metallic ring core. On one half of the ring...
I'm assuming it was so simple because we had to have sent that to explore Europa like 20... the technology has to be at least 20 years old or something like that, right? To get all the way to Europa, that'd take a long time for some human artificial satellite.
Wire coils clockwise, and on the
Obviously
other half,
human. I
it
don't
is
know if
wrapped
it'd be penguin or something.
counterclockwise. Another measuring coil is placed on top of this ring to measure the magnetic field running through the core. Without an external magnetic field, the magnetic field generated by these opposing coils would cancel each other out. But when placed inside a magnetic field, the core has a slight bias in the external field's direction. This can be sensed in the outer windings and measured as an electric current, allowing us to detect magnetic fields with precision, but not enough precision to detect a submarine. For that, we need a device with an incredibly high sampling rate and sensitivities as low as 0.001.
I knew Australia was going to come up in this video.
Nanotesla, 50 million times weaker than the Earth's magnetic field of 50 microtesla. To measure this, we take advantage of light and its interaction with helium atoms. Helium atoms interact with infrared light at a precise wavelength of 1085 nanometers. When a helium cell is placed between a laser of that wavelength and a photodiode, the atoms absorb the light and jump to a higher energy level. As they relax, they emit light in random directions, reducing the amount that reaches the detector. But this changes when the atoms are exposed to a magnetic field. Their energy levels split into three, with the energy gap between them depending on the strength of the magnetic field. This is known as the Zeeman effect. Now, when the laser shines on the helium, atoms can still be excited, but as they relax, they may fall into any of the three levels.
Oh, wow.
The key is that 1085
the
nanometer
Zeeman
laser
effect.
can only excite atoms from the middle level. Eventually, the laser depletes that level, leaving fewer atoms available to absorb the light. As a result, the helium cell becomes transparent, a condition called the optically pumped state. To measure the magnetic field,
I'm loving this video's graphics, by the way. Like these are very complicated topics. But I'm able to keep up with them because of the clearness of the graphics. I mean, that's really important when it comes to. I don't know if this is like an educational video, but it's kind of an educational video, that's for sure. It's educating me.
Frequency pulse tuned to the energy gap between the levels. This pulse repopulates the middle level, letting atoms absorb the laser light again. This results in a dip in the detected light, but only when the pulse's frequency matches the energy gap.
Jeez.
At the average magnetic field strength of the Earth of 50,000 nanoteslas, the corresponding frequency is 1.4 megahertz.
My mind, I feel like my head's about to explode. This is getting really crazy to know this is how far technology is going. I literally made a comment about that earlier, though. Like, we figured out nuclear fission in the 30s. So no one knows what the hell we're discovering right now. Like, we don't know. It hasn't been popularized yet. But whatever is being discovered and invented right now is probably going to be very popular in 10, 20 years. It can be pretty far down the line for people to fully adopt it. Look at the internet. Like, it started off in the 60s or 70s. It's been around for like a while. It took till like the 2000s for really a lot of people to start adopting it.
At 50,100,
I do think the technology is kind of advancing. Like, the human populace is a lot more open to technology, so maybe it won't take that long anymore.
Teslas, it's slightly higher at 1.43 megahertz. By constantly sweeping the range of frequencies and observing when light intensity drops, we can precisely determine the magnetic field strength perpendicular to the helium laser axis. With 3 detectors aligned along the X, Y, and Z axis, we can map the magnetic field in 3 dimensions. However, even with this technology, it's not easy detecting a magnetic field anomaly this small. The ASQ-81 magnetometer is typically housed in a boom or tail stinger extending from an aircraft to minimize interference from the aircraft's own magnetic field.
Oh, okay.
Chances increase drastically.
And it looks better too. I mean, it looks aerodynamic to put it back there. Yeah, it would look, I mean, I guess you could put it in the nose, but the tail looks kind of nice.
Aircraft's own magnetic field. Chances
looks a little funny,
drastically
like a bowling ball pin.
The detector is to the object causing the anomaly. So deeper diving submarines are much harder to detect. Because of this, the P3 is most effective at low altitudes, forcing it to fly
But that's going to decrease its range, right, to be able to catch it? I would assume you'd want to be higher up to get a bigger... I mean, just look at the radius right here that's being drawn.
500 feet or lower, while it follows a systematic grid search pattern. This is a useful tool that appears in every large Navy arsenal. But for every military technology that develops, a counter is also developed.
It's been like that since... Well, I guess it's always been like that, but I was specifically referencing the Cold War. Like, it was just like a race constantly back and forth.
Not all metals are ferromagnetic. Titanium is diamagnetic, meaning it has an extremely weak effect on magnetic fields. So building a submarine out of it is extremely appealing. There's only one problem. Submarines are gigantic, and we can't easily weld titanium because it oxidizes extremely quickly when exposed to heat.
They used to not be that big. I've been in a couple submarines myself. They used to be pretty cramped. I guess they're always going to feel a little bit crammed. It's a sub, Drew, but I've been to some early submarines. Those feel like toasters under the water.
This was a problem that Grumman faced while manufacturing the F-14's titanium wing box. Grumman had to custom build an electron beam welding device that removed oxygen from the built area and provided the heat necessary for welding with a concentrated beam of electrons.
Wow.
Now imagine how confused the United States was when
here we go.
reports began to emerge of Russian submarines with hulls made entirely out of titanium.
Wow.
In 1969, sightings began to emerge in the Never River of new ultra-small nuclear-powered submarines. At just 79 meters long, it was the world's smallest nuclear submarine.
This is like the constant back and forth of the Cold War. It was literally just like both sides being overly paranoid, thinking that the other side had like a technological advancement. Now we got to catch up, and it's just like boom, boom, boom. Luckily, it never ramped up to a nuclear war. Luckily, it did eventually end, but it's still scary that that race is kind of being continued right now. Up until now, you know, like the thing that was kind of stopping things was, well, like our economic ties to each other, and obviously as we head on into 2025 and later into the future, we're going to be less and less economic tied together, and possibly another Cold War, but a Cold War that happens between multiple powers at the same time. That kind of ramps up, especially in the military-industrial complex.
At that time. But that wasn't the most unusual thing about it. Its reserve buoyancy was about 3 times higher than that of American equivalent submarines, meaning about 30% of its volume lay above the water's surface when its ballast tanks were emptied. And its surface was much more reflective than a typical steel hull. Both of these facts pointed towards the Soviets using a new material, titanium. If this was true, it was a major technological development. Titanium's strength-to-weight ratio would allow the submarine to be lighter, smaller, stronger, faster, and capable of diving even deeper than its steel.
Isn't this what that one dude made his what did that one guy that visited the Titanic make his hull out of? Was it titanium? Because that would be kind of awkward. I remember he was talking about whatever resource he was using. Oh, it might have been like I don't know.
Steel counterparts, while being
Cardboard.
extremely difficult to detect with magnetic anomaly detectors. This news shook CIA analysts. A submarine that could dive deeper and avoid being detected was a major advantage. How were the Russians building something this big out of titanium? Many didn't believe it was possible, and the original theorist, Herb Lord, spent the final decade of his life trying and failing to prove it.
Dang.
Analysts believed it was possible for the Soviets to weld smaller titanium parts in hermetically sealed chambers, in a similar way to the F-14's wing box, which also began production in 1969. We are now sure that they did indeed manage to build titanium submarines, something other nations have not managed to duplicate. which is likely why there is essentially no public information available on how they did it.
Wow.
Some websites claim that the Soviets hermetically sealed the entire indoor shipyard and had workers enter through airlocks with what were essentially spacesuits.
I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised at all that the Soviets or even the Americans would do some crazy stuff like this, to be honest. At that time, like I said, I mean, they were, to them, it was like this is going to be possibly the end of the world, or it could lead to the end of the world. I mean, the secrecy, the espionage, it was insane.
With their welding equipment in hand. But a search of CIA documents do not support that claim. I would
Interesting this was in the 60s. Something I always think about when it comes to the Cold War is that a lot of experts at the time really thought that World War III would kick off sometime in the 60s or 70s because they thought that the Soviets would specifically need to, well, they would need to replenish a whole generation, literally a whole generation of young men. They lost so much. You could still see it in their demographics today, how many Russians were lost because of World War II. So they assumed that the Soviets would have to wait an entire generation, so they'd have to have a baby boom after 1945, and right around, well, 1965, maybe even 1962 or 63, which coincides with the Cuban Missile Crisis, they would have a bunch of new 18-year-olds. You don't want just 18-year-olds, you need to wait like a couple more years so that there's like fresh 23-year-olds, fresh 18-year-olds. You want a whole unit of people to send to war, but yeah.
Personally assume they created
that probably made them even more paranoid.
Localized method of sealing off atmospheric air from the weld zone, with some sort of airtight attachment or smaller chambers like the one Grumman created. Creating airtight seals in a small space is hard enough. Doing it at shipyard scale, with all of the contamination that comes with an industrial setting, just does not seem plausible to me. This is a truly remarkable achievement, something the US deemed too difficult and high cost to even attempt. But with any new novel threat like this comes a counter. This submarine could travel at 40 knots while submerged, faster than any NATO submarine. Somehow faster than any torpedo too.
Jeez.
The Mark 48 torpedo was developed as a result, capable of traveling at 55 knots.
Nice.
It uses a fuel specifically formulated for torpedoes.
Why'd that look like wine for a second? I'm like, it looked like something. I don't know. I'm sure you don't want to consume that, but for a split second, I'm like, that looks tasty.
Called autofuel. It's a pretty amazing red monopropellant, meaning the fuel and oxidizer are combined into a single mixture. It was specifically formulated.
This is such a fascinating video. I've always loved real engineering, but this specifically is super interesting to see him talk about this stuff, especially kind of more of in a topic that I like to cover, China and Taiwan and things like this. We're always talking about this sort of thing.
Be stored inside torpedoes for years without any issue. And surprisingly, it's pretty hard to ignite, considered non-flammable and non-explosive under most circumstances, which is unique for a monopropellant and important for a device designed to operate deep under the sea.
This is pretty awesome B-roll coverage, by the way, too. Like the footage that he was able to get a hold of, I mean, it's pretty amazing because it's not easy.
The torpedo also has a unique propulsion system. It uses something called an axial flow liquid propellant swashplate pump jet engine. That's a lot of words that you probably understand individually, but when combined, it becomes a bit of an engineering riddle. Axial simply means the pistons are parallel to the drive shaft, helping reduce the cross-sectional area of the torpedo without sacrificing piston head volume. But this means we need to replace the camshaft that converts the reciprocating motion of the pistons into rotational motion in the drive shaft. For this, we need a swash plate. These 6 pistons then drive the 2 contra-rotating propellers that are shrouded by this ducting and nozzle. This is a pump jet, making this torpedo a scary adversary.
I'm just thinking like these human beings that are working on this are some of the smartest human beings in the world, and we don't know their name. They're just working in an office somewhere trying to figure out the most efficient way to make this torpedo run a little bit faster. And they're just walking on the street, and these people are like literally incredible, but nobody knows them. It's kind of sad, but yeah.
Adversary for any submarine.
Damn, look at that thing pop out like that.
It needs to find its enemy. It has active and passive homing sonar for this purpose. And when it's first fired, a wire follows it out from the torpedo tube that connects it to the submarine's superior sonar. Its target is to strike near the midriff of the ship. This is a big torpedo with a massive warhead. When it explodes, it's capable of breaking the back of even the strongest titanium submarine.
Ooh.
This is what it looks like when it finds its target.
Dang!
Here, it is striking the Australian destroyer HMAS.
Interesting that it pops up once, and then the explosion. Oh, so that's like when the torpedo actually enters into the hull of the ship, and then it actually explodes. It doesn't happen all at the same time.
1999, and here it is striking the American USS Fletcher during a 2008 RIMPAC exercise. Once a submarine is found, it's not a safe place to be. This is why so much of the battle against submarines revolves around detection and tracking. Much of the major advancements in submarines have revolved around reducing their audio and magnetic signatures, but a new technology has joined the race that needs neither. Space-based synthetic aperture radar, or SAR.
It's just funny how like the Germans still World War II like came up with this sort of thing that is still like they were the first. I mean, obviously, like during those days, like this submarine technology was still kind of advancing. I mean, they had submarines before World War II, obviously, but they were not very good and they were getting better and better. It's interesting to see them be the first ones to employ it really effectively. And here we are. Like that obviously is still happening to this day. We're still kind of out here. Like that completely changed the game of war for sure overnight. Maybe not overnight. It happened slowly, but yeah.
And in 2023, China launched 4 satellites that utilized this technology over the Western Pacific to monitor sea traffic. This technology is honestly pretty insane because they aren't just detecting surface movement. They can detect submarines under the surface by looking for their distinctive wakes that travel to the surface. To do that, the radar has to have excellent resolution to picture fine details, which can be difficult for typical radar as resolution is directly related to the length of the radar's antenna. The equation to calculate the length of antenna needed for a particular spatial resolution is pretty simple. This is the radar wavelength. A lower wavelength results in a shorter antenna. This is the altitude, a higher altitude.
I know a couple of people that work in defense in my personal life. I'm going to have to ask them if they know this. I mean, I'm sure they don't really work with... Honestly, I don't know what they work with. I don't know exactly what they're doing.
Altitude.
But it's something very small. Because like these, you know, these like planes, submarines, whatever it is, they have... It could be like a screw. Like I could ask them what they're doing and it's like, oh yeah, I'm trying to make this screw smaller somewhere in the back of the plane. Like, it's crazy. It could be something that tiny, and it makes a monumental difference, obviously, as we're seeing.
It results in a longer antenna. And this is the spatial resolution needed. Let's say we want a 1 meter resolution with X-band radar. That would need an antenna 25.5 kilometers long. Oh shit. This length is called the aperture, and that's the first clue to how synthetic aperture radars work. They take advantage of the satellite's altitude to create a virtual aperture, basically like a long exposure on a regular camera. As the satellite moves forward, it continuously sends radar pulses and records the echoes. Each pulse overlaps, and the radar will record the same object multiple times from slightly different angles.
This is making me think, like, will we get to a future where, like the way the battleship went, like the dodo bird, like will we get to the point where battleship, I don't know why I use that metaphor, will we get to a point where submarines will be like the battleship, kind of more and more irrelevant because we're advancing in technology in so many different ways? Like, will there ever be a time where, submarines are no longer useful because they're not able to hide in the oceans anymore? It seems probably likely, but I don't know. It always seems like whenever maybe they did catch the submarines, submarine technology explodes somehow in certain areas. So, but who knows? I would really like to know this guy's answer for that, if he thinks submarine technology will eventually kind of just, it'll just be less and less effective, like battleships.
These pulse returns
less and less
are then
used
processed and
for
combined,
sure too.
giving us incredible high detail 3D.
That tends to be how military technology goes, even when you go back to like the ancient times, But it is kind of funny how fundamentally sometimes the best stuff is like the simplest stuff, just like a long stick with a knife, wrapped around it. Spears, so effective. Give me a spear over a sword any day. I'd much rather try to stab you from 20 feet away than I don't want to get up close to you. Nah, you might smell.
The world and the ability to detect submarines by the waves they make from space. Technology is catching up with traditional submarines in other ways too.
I can see that.
Remember that drone being charged underwater in China's model of the Great Acoustic Wall? That may well be the way of the future. Take
Wow.
Northrop Grumman's Manta Ray drone, which you can see docked on Google Maps right now.
Whoa!
It's the true future of
Whoa,
underwater
whoa! This man just leaking some highly. Is this? I'm guessing it's not secretive, but holy crap! I feel like the CIA is gonna knock on my door now. I shouldn't be looking at this image.
warfare. Drones are all the rage right now, but their effects are going to be most pronounced under the sea. Removing people from the equation.
Drone subs? I didn't even think about that. I do know that drone warfare has completely changed the game. Look at what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, but I didn't think about the drone subs that are going to be happening. Man, that's fantastic. That's one of my worst nightmares. Put me in a sub. I'm okay. Do not put me in a sub. They probably would, because I'm not the tallest guy ever. So they probably would either put me in the sub. Why is it always like the short dudes that have to have like the worst job in the military? Whether it's like you put us in the caves of Vietnam, to like, find the Vietnamese, the Viet Cong. They put like kind of the smaller soldiers to go down there. Or in the sub, what else? It's always some tight spots. I don't want to do that, please.
Changes everything. Drones never need to surface. With those underwater power cables, we can recharge them at a hub and have the drones continuously patrol their area. With no need for crushable air inside the hull, we can get more creative with our design choices. First, we can switch from metal to reinforced plastics and lower our magnetic signature. We can use batteries with near-silent electric motors to massively reduce our audio signature.
Wow.
And when needed,
Yeah, you don't need human beings. I mean, that instantly, because there's no humans that are going to be inside this vessel, it's like, I can't even imagine. So submarine technology is going to change. This probably is going to be the future, because you don't need to protect a whole crew that's inside. That's a little bit scary. So maybe submarines have another maybe 10 years, 20 years. It's going to be hard to say. It's kind of fast how crazy the battleships kind of went and were gone in terms of how often we use them.
Turn off all of their...
That's the things about technology. Like the next day, like tomorrow, something that has been around for decades is like, oh, that's no longer useful. And then people stop building them and then they just fall into obscurity.
Major functions and just enter listening mode. No need for a great wall when you could have a great swarm.
Dang.
These autonomous electric submarines are likely going to make crude submarines a thing of the past in the not too distant future.
It's so fascinating to see what's happening with drones too, especially in a world where clearly we are beginning to run out of people. Certain nations are 100% beginning to run out of people. So, and I don't obviously we don't want people to die in war. So war is still going to take place, but it's going to be through robotics. It's interesting to see where this is going, especially, like I said, with the demographic issue. It's weird how technology is kind of counteracting for that. And I literally talk about that whenever I talk about demographics here on this channel. I always kind of say, well, technology is the mystery factor when it comes to, like South Korea and Japan dying. It's like, well, there's going to be AI that's going to maybe be able to make up for some of the job loss and, well, drones with war, unfortunately. But yeah, technology is always the key factor. I mean, I'm not surprised that the Chinese are doing anything they can to both assert their dominance over the South China Sea as well as Taiwan. I'm not sure exactly where this is going to go. I have heard reports that if the Chinese don't attack Taiwan in 5 years, then they won't do it. That is, I don't see how you can make that claim. You know what I mean? We have no idea what's going to be going on in 2035, let alone, honestly, like 2030. So I think they could attack Taiwan if they really wanted to. And it's scary because, like I said in the very beginning of this video, tension is happening everywhere. It really feels like all the major players of the world are trying to exert their own little spheres of influence right now. And if that means going to war, that means going to war. Whether it's Russia or China or India, it's starting to feel like the Victorian era once again. Step 1, remove water. I like that idea. Kind of funny to think that the entire submarine warfare field started by dropping explosive barrels out of ships, and it still revolves around dropping explosive barrels out of ships. Like I said, sometimes the most simplest stuff, that's the best way to do it. Sticks wrapped with knives at the end, like spears. Give me that over anything. Should have mentioned degaussing. Submarine hulls are regularly wiped with magnetics to reduce the magnetic signature that builds up from traveling through Earth's magnetic field. Did I say magnetic enough times? Magnets, magnetic. That's a nice sonar array you got there. Be a shame if someone were to drag an anchor across it. Oh, That would probably cut the wires, possibly, maybe. The P3 is no longer used by the U.S. Navy for ASW and has been entirely replaced by the P8. You showed videos of the P3, but the torpedo drop clip was from a Jesus, oh my God. Wow, I'm not surprised that these comments are filled with this stuff. You're telling me we went from horses to this 150 years ago? Now that's my type of comment. Man, imagine if we dedicated this level of genuinity but towards improving people's lives instead of ending them. Yeah, it is kind of sad to think of. It's cheaper to be friends. Like I said, I think that it's a little bit scary that we do put so much effort on this sort of effort to just stay technologically ahead. But you know what? There's nothing new here. Like, we've been kind of doing that humans have always kind of been doing that, but we're doing it now at a scale that is obviously unprecedented with more and more technology. We're continuing to stand on the backs of like geniuses that figured it out, and it continues to escalate. Obviously we already have the technology to destroy the world, like, 7-8 times. So, a little bit concerning. We'll see what drones do to the whole thing. I'm a little worried, but definitely go check out Real Engineering. Really enjoy this video. I'm kind of paranoid now. Big old thanks to my patrons over at Patreon. Come out here calling bro a history expert. Tambre, Drew's Argentinian Trust Fund, NordTyrol, Nolan, Miglu the Goat, LuxembourgLover, KirinoIsBestGirl, KingBearHaze, Fredrik Tibblin, DOOCHBAGGINS, Pavlik, Carmel Saida, AlexandertheTerrible. If you'd like your name here, check out that link in the description down below to patreon.com.